good night, teacher. I will explain the first three topics. And first topic is neurological consideration. This topic is evidence research that human brain, um, the human brain has two functions. For example, in the left side has a analytic thought and logic, language, and science and math. In the side right has holistic thought, intuition, creativity, art, and music. Is a more passivity. And when we talk about the lateralization in the brain, is a low process little by little in the children for alcanzing the second language. In the second topic is psychomotor consideration, and seeing closely related to strictly neurological consideration, adverted speech muscle. In the muscle in the gargants are developed only to the extent in the 5 age. Is convincing and the control is present is most 5 years old. In the finally, cognitive consideration has a two stage. Is a human cognition develops rapidly throughout the first 16 years old. Is the final age. For example, on this topic for stage, and the first is sensory motor age from 0 to 2. The second is the preoperational stage from 2 to 7, and concrete operational is stage from 7 to 11, and finally formal operational that stage 11 to 16 years old. The finally consideration is the cognitive. Domain is the alternation as between and merely learning.
The affective consideration. This topic is about the attitude and the emotion that has a child when it's growing. The attitude is something important when they are learning a second language. If the attitude is negative, can affect in the success in the learning process. For the children, it's more easily to adapt to the environment where they are learning a second language. This factor is different for the adults. They have more difficult to adapt to the environment and to learn a second language. It's necessary for all people that are learning a second language have a positive attitude, because this facilitate the process when they are learning a second language or they are learning another idiom. Linguistic consideration. This topic is about the bilingualism and how the people acquire a second language. It has two categories: simultaneous, that it refers when a child is learning two languages at the same time from birth, and successive, that is about when a child has already acquired the first language and then learn a second language in a childhood. The child uses the same strategies to learn their target language and the second language. In adults, it's more difficult to learn a second language because it predominates their target language. Critical period hypothesis. It's about how the age affects in a second language acquisition. State that the few years of life is the correct age to acquire a second language if present adequate stimuli.
So I want to talk about three theories, and one of them is acculturation model. This theory is proposed for young humans that describe the acquisition process of a second language by members of ethnical minorities than typical immigrants, including immigrants workers or the children of a social groups. This acquisition process takes place on the natural context or the majority of the language, and this setting mean so gets all the 30 is that acquisitions of a second language strictly like the acculturation process, and the learners have a success in determining by extent they can orient but themselves to the target language culture. Accommodation theory. These theories focus on the two partners, and one of them is convergent and the other one is divergent of a community behaviors, particularly has relate goals for social approval, of communication, efficiency, and identity. And one of them is Cambridge. In Cambridge refers to strategies to through which two individuals adapt to each other's communicates behaviors to reduce this social difference. And that meanwhile divergent is refers to the instance it's which individual assent to a speech now verbal difference between themselves and their interlocutors. That speech accommodation theory was deployment to demonstrate all the value of the social psychology concepts to understand the dynamics of speech it sought to explain. Well, in the last theory is discourse theory. Well, in general, discourse theory is concerned with the human expression often in the form of the language, and they highlight how much expressions are linked in the human knowledge. But discourse theory have many meanings of a such, and one of them is use of the language or conversation or text or share a way of you talking or create takes codes, the way of your speaking of a topic.
The monitor model is a set of interesting hypotheses that were developed by Stephen Krashen in 1970s. It's interesting because some of these premises have been disproved, but during 18th and 19th, the monitor model was adopted by some educational system, much to their chagrin. The variable competence model. This theory proposed that the ability to use language varies systematically within functional domains and linguistic contexts, and that such variability is inherent in the interlanguage as well. This model was proposed by Rob Ellis. According to Ellis, the process of language is more pragmatic than we think. People have more understanding of the language that was expressed in discourse. And the last but not least, the universal hypothesis. This hypothesis states that language acquisition is governed by the way in which natural language are organized. That is, certain universal linguistic properties influence the order in which the rules of a specific language are acquired. According to the universal grammar hypothesis, then linguistic rather than general cognitive factor that determine acquisition.
Where the room, yeah, got no ceiling.